Ladies and gentlemen, today we have on the Oracle, or Cade Orgill. Cade was the champion of the 2024 Brawl competition, a large sales competition between the entire company. Cade was also, in his tenure or time at BRD, he was the top rookie in 2024. Cade's just a joy to be around. He's a bundle of fun. He's really interesting. He's also recently went to Tomato Fight, which we'll talk deeply about in the podcast. But a lot to learn from him and his happy-go-lucky spirit. Dude, so Cade, great summer this year. Came in a rookie phenom. Was able to win the Brawl competition, which is, for those of you who didn't participate, it was the big end-of-year comp that we had this year. And not only were you able to win the Brawl, but you were also leaving the summer top rookie on the year. You blew up very quickly, and you were competing with some of the best guys in the entire company. So we're gonna get into it today. Your different tips and tricks on how to have a successful summer, things you did prior and kind of in the middle of the summer and now doing after, to kind of make sure that next year's great. But just kind of getting into it, I want to talk a little bit about the vacation you just took. So yeah. Tell everybody, and the big one I want to make sure we don't leave out is what do you call it? Tomato Festival?
The Tomatina.
The Tomatina. So tell us about the Tomatina, the trip, everything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I finished selling Monday the 16th, I believe, and then I came out. I drove 20 hours to California, got on a flight straight to Spain, to Madrid. It was just me and my dad. It's kind of like a end of summer trip. He was like, "You deserve it." I mean, I didn't really have a normal summer per se, so this was my little summer of 4 days. So we went to Spain, flew to Madrid. We got to France first. I got to practice my French a little bit. I don't speak any French. But yeah, we got there. We were spending the night. We had a hotel right on downtown Madrid, right there on the strip. So we got to hang out. We went to Toledo. We went to, I don't know, all these cool little cities. Got to see all these nights.
Well, dude, I've never been to that part of the world. But what surprised you most when rolling up? What was it like? The people, the landscape, I don't know, the culture. What was it that you're I wasn't expecting this, but that was kind of cool.
Two things. One, I didn't expect to blend in. I lived in Colombia before, and I just looked different. But in Spain, I mean, nobody even looked at me twice. It was just I blended in until I spoke, and they were like, "This guy's not from here." That, and also the culture was different. Just the buildings, everything's old, and not in the sense that old junky, but old castle. Everything was pretty cool. Yeah, those are definitely two aspects that I really liked. The Tomatina you asked about earlier, it's kind of like a tomato festival. I remember reading about the history of it, and pretty much they were protesting something, and they just threw a bunch of tomatoes at around the city, and now every single year since then, in the city called Buñol, they pretty much bring trailers of tomatoes, and they have 20,000 people, all tourists, and they just fill the streets with tomatoes, and just everybody goes ham.
So am I saying this right? Tomatina?
Tomatina.
The Tomatina.
Yeah.
How'd you guys hear about it? How'd you be oh, do we want to fly to Spain and throw some tomatoes at everybody?
Well, my dad, he's a big adventure guy. He likes to do stuff like this, and Spain was on the radar. No, actually, the Tomatina was on the radar. He had heard about this first, and then he was like, "We gotta go to Spain." So we kind of planned the whole trip around that. That was just one of the days, though. But I think he had just looked up fun things to do in Spain, and the Tomatina was just one of them.
And so when the Tomatina starts, is it 3, 2, 1, and everyone starts chucking tomatoes? Give us a visual of what the Tomatina looks like, because it sounds pretty cool.
No, it was awesome. So pretty much 20,000 people fill this little street, and then they all the neighbors bring hoses from their houses, and they attach hoses to all the fire hydrants, and they just start spraying all the people. So you just get soaking wet. And then you get to the end of the street, and there's this 40-foot tall greased pole with a ham tied to the top. It's a tradition. And you get all these guys just climbing on top. Literally, you have to look it up. Just guys climbing on top of each other. to get to this ham.
We'll clip in some photos or videos of it. So when people are watching the pod, that sounds super sick. And so, was that something you knew going into the summer? You were planning on like from the beginning. You're like, we're going to the Tomatino at the end of August.
No, in fact, it was like my last 2 days of summer. My dad was like, "Hey, when you get home, do you want to go to Spain?" I was like, "Sure." My grandma's from there, so it was kind of a cool thing to, I don't know, go to that country.
Cool. Well, so for anyone that's sold, like everyone has a certain goal they want to hit or things they hope to accomplish. And one of the cool things when you were thinking about going on this trip, you called me right before because you were trying to tier up on the pay scale. And you're like, I'm this far away. I don't know if I can do it. And you're like, and you had some questions about how the pay scale worked. We figured it all out, got that settled. And then I remember you just being like, okay, I have 3 days left to do this. And I just got to sell. I think it was like 25K like in the last like 3 days. And you're like, I've just got to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
And what blew me away is I was like, man, for 3 days, that's be pushing it. And dude, I think you had it done in like 2.5, and then you texted me. You said, "Hey, I'm going home." Do goals like that, I mean, obviously you're a very driven person. I mean, finishing like where you did on the summer and all that stuff. I could tell you were working hard. Was that like? I'm sure that was motivating, but is that something that you patterned throughout the summer? Just been like, hey, I'm gonna like. Obviously, the Tomatino was like a week thing that you put your foot down to then tier up on the pay scale to make more money. But is that something you did regularly throughout the summer, just with your own mindset in order to hit different peaks or points or tier up?
Well, I always had the goal, especially once I got better, like halfway through the summer, that I can sell one an hour. So it was like if it's 3 and I don't have 3, like I'm behind. And those last 3 days, I knew I had to hit a goal. So I did the math, and I was like, all right, you have to sell like 8 a day. And I knew it was possible because I'd done it before, but this time I just went out earlier. Like I drove out to area, I got there like at 8:30 in the morning, and I was like, Cade, you just need to get ahead. And I think those little goals really helped me, especially those last 3 days, just because it wasn't like I need to do good today. It was like I need to sell this, or I'm gonna have to sell like one more day and maybe not go to Spain. So I think just that time crunch for me really like boosted my morale and just made me like more confident on the doors, because I was like, no, like I'm not leaving your door until I sell you. And that, I think, really helped me those last few days.
That's cool. Okay, so backing up a little bit, I kind of want to like talk about where you're coming from, like early Cade. Was there any like entrepreneurial endeavor prior to this, and then kind of like what brought you in? And, like, just give us the origin story.
The origin. Okay, I'm Cade. I'm from Huntington Beach, California. Born and raised. I grew up on the beach surfing and everything like that. And then work-wise, I mean, my dad always had a thing in our family that like when you turn 16, you work, right? So the day I turned 16, I had to turn in an application. I applied to In-N-Out, and in California, that's kind of like a hard place to get into. I mean, everyone wants to work there. They pay good. It's a good experience. So I applied, didn't hear back. My dad's like, you got to go in. So I went in like 3 days that week, just like, hey, I need that interview. Hey, when's my interview? Like, hey, that. So that kind of like helped me figure out the world of like getting things done. You just have to be persistent. I worked there for 2 years. And then sales-wise, in Provo, before I did sales, like pest control, I worked at a call center in downtown Provo. No, in South Provo. And it was just like cold calling or lukewarm calling, like State Farm clients. And I had to just convince them to meet with their agent. So I'd call, hey, I'm Cade, calling on part of your agent. He'd like to meet with you to go over your policies. And that, I mean, was right before the summer. So I think that really helped.
Yeah. Well, that's a great like camp or training to go through right before you're about to go do something. I mean, very similar, ton of crossover. The one thing though that I liked in what you were telling there though is it sounds like your dad's been a great coach as far as like putting you to work and working early. I think having someone like that in your corner is important. And I think a lot of times when people get into summer sales or into doing anything hard, like because life's hard and prepping, he started when you were young at 16 being like, hey, we're going to instill some work ethic and kind of go take things to the next level. But I think a lot of times we live in a world where people are very individualistic. They think, hey, everything comes from me or it's on me. But having someone in your corner like that, like your father, or someone to help you or guide you or push you along and take you to the next level is super important. And I think a lot of times when people don't have that in any type of environment, you're not going to succeed as much. And I think you're a good person that I think has figured that out because you had a great dad that taught you those things. But I think you also throughout the summer you were great at using all the leadership around you to ask questions, to lean on them, which really propelled your summer. I see a lot of guys come in and they don't lean heavily on those that have come before them to get to the next level, and it hurts them because I think a lot of times they think that, oh, I'm not good, I can't do this. But talk to me on that. Do you think, like, have you always been that way of being good, like, on just like leading with leadership? Do you think that comes from him? Like, what are some things that you've done to kind of like, every time there was a morning meeting and there was like I was like, hey, does anyone have questions? And the room would be silent, and you'd be like, I have one, Dawson. And then you kind of go right in and ask your question and get on that. So that's a sign that I've always seen of a high performer, and I think you were a great example of that throughout the whole summer. But kind of talk to me on that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, regarding my dad, he always had like a no lazy culture in the house. Like we had to work. He didn't like us being on like phones all the time, just like wasting time. So I always had that like motivation to be productive. And then in school, I started to see that was a pattern with me. I'd be the kid that like raised my hand when nobody else wanted to, and because of that, I'd learn a lot faster. Just because a lot of people had the same question as me, but nobody wanted to raise their hand. And then I definitely saw that help me a lot in sales, just because like in the morning meetings, I had no shame raising my hand like 5 times during the meeting, just being like, hey, how do I learn this? And even in the first, I don't know, few weeks, there had been guys who had done it before, and I was maybe outperformed them the day before, and I was like, hey, dude, I need help on this. And they were like, you're coming to me? I was like, yeah, you have a lot more experience. You obviously can help me out a lot more just because you've been on the door so much longer. So I think just asking questions definitely helped me out.
That's cool. One close that you use in particular that I saw a lot throughout the summer, like just in morning meetings or just like when we were hanging out like on a Saturday, I use the high five close a lot. And I think a lot of times, especially people coming through sales now, feel it's gimmicky, feel it's like it's weird to like go for a touch or anything like that. But was that a close you actually used, like some level of physical touch with the customer on the doorstep to close them?
Yeah, definitely. I think I remember you said once in a meeting, it made everyone laugh. You're like, old people, they love it when you touch them. And it sounded weird in the meeting, but you meant like, give them like a little shoulder tap. I think since that day, I always would touch someone's shoulder, something like that. And I'd use the high five close at the end of a pitch, as if like when I was closing someone and we were kind of getting towards the deal, I'm like, hey, let's just do it. And it's kind of awkward when they don't give you a high five, so you got to like use it in the right moment. But I think that sense of physical touch definitely brings like a connection with you and the customer, and they're gonna think like, shoot, man, how do you high five this guy? I can't say no to him anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw it work miracles.
I love that. Well, and one thing that I love about like a high five close, that's not a close, that's not a definite close. It's not one you got to use every time or anything like that. But finding small closes like the high five close that you can add into your quiver to go out and take down customers is really, really big if you can find 6 or 7 or 8 of those and sprinkle them in throughout the day. Because it can be the difference of having a sale or like having no momentum and running into 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock. But let's talk about momentum really quick. What are some things kind of like maybe off the doors? I really want to talk about your routine of getting out to area. One of the things you were really good about the whole summer is you were always the first person to ask for a hood, and then you were always the first person to like typically leave the office. Talk to me about when you were in the car, like going out to area. What do you do when you park? Like basically the transition from office to hitting your hand hitting the first door.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just saw a big difference in the summer when I started to get out earlier. Obviously, like you can stay and talk, but if you just like get your area and get out, I mean, obviously you're gonna start knocking doors a lot faster. You're gonna talk to a lot of people that you might not have talked to if you started knocking at 2. So I definitely saw that to be something that really helped me out. I like to have my area kind of picked out before, like what specific streets I was gonna knock before I even went out, just so I can get out to area, park here, and just get at it. Because it's not a very good start to your day when you have to park and be like, all right, this is my area. Like, where am I going to knock doors? Because then you start off slower. You obviously don't have that momentum. So I think just knowing what I'm going to do before I even get there was definitely something that helped up my game, just because I get the area prepared.
I love it. Okay, I want to even go a little deeper though. Let's say you're parking the car. So you just pull up to area. You're parking in front of some old lady's house. How quickly are you going out the door? Is there anything you do before you're exiting? Do you listen to anything on your way out? Is there anything you're purposely avoiding?
I believe in God. So like right when I'd park, I'd always pray, just like, God, if this is in your plan, help me do well today. Help me know what to say and just be confident. Because I already knew all the stuff I needed to say, so I just asked for help with, like, to get the words out of my mouth, the right words. And then when I'd park, I'd try to get out as quickly as possible. There's obviously the temptation just to sit there and be on your phone or just not do anything. So I try to park and get out as quickly as possible. Obviously, I'd park, make sure I was in a good spot. And then, one thing I always did check is the calendar. Obviously, sometimes you're going to be out with a group of people in an area. So before I even knocked my first door, I wanted to know, like, all right, what day am I scheduling appointments? What times are still open? That definitely helped me out because there were days I didn't do that. And I'd knock on a door and I'd sell them. And at the end, I'd be like, oh, yeah, and I'd have to, like, open the calendar app. And you don't really want to do that. You want to already go in being like, hey, it's Tuesday. I'm scheduling out for Thursday. I have some afternoon spots and one morning spot. Just so during the pitch, you can confidently say that without having to check back on your app. So those were two things I did in the car before I got out that helped me.
And one thing I like about that in particular, like checking this calendar, having that, sometimes you lose deals for like on a millisecond. It just takes a little, like a pause there, or a person like having too much time to like stew on one of your objections or anything like that. So something like that's really important. And I think it also transitions really well into name dropping and bandwagoning. I think just like how you had the schedule already known beforehand, having 6 or 7 names as you're rolling up to a hood, or ones you've got from the day before, top of mind, and being able to say first and last names can go a long way in a sales process. Because we've all been there when one name was the difference of being like, oh, Suzanne's doing it? Yeah, I want to do it. And if you're slow to the draw, a lot of times you'll lose if you're not good at having that ready. So I think things like that, knowing the calendar, knowing the area, and then also knowing the people around are 3 big things that I think can really elevate a sales process if you can have them quick to the hip. So that's great. Cool. Now, talk to me about your competitive nature, because you are I think you're quietly competitive. That's kind of what I've got. You're not big on trash talk, but I can also, there was a couple moments where I could see, Cade definitely wants to compete. And was there any names in particular when you saw them on the leaderboard, you're like, oh, I got to keep up with them, or like, hey, I want to make sure I beat so and so, or anything like that? Was there ever did you ever have that feeling, or is that something that drives you, or no?
Yeah, definitely it's a pride thing, and it's a quiet pride thing too. At my call center job, I remember getting there and excelling and doing really well. My name was up on the leaderboard one day. I remember I got first of that day of the call center, most calls per hour, or most appointments set or something like that. And I remember that day on, I was like, shoot, I can get up there tomorrow. People are going to see my name. I'm that guy. And that motivation really helped me out. Definitely during the brawl, seeing Landon or Oakland, or there were plenty of guys that were just amazing salesmen that I went against. And when I saw their name, what really motivated me was that some of these guys would maybe get out to area a little bit sooner than I did on a competition, and I'd be still driving, and it would be 1 on the leaderboard. That started a fire in me, just dude, Landon's not only is he on the doors already, but he's got a sale. And when I had that motivation, I had to get out there and start tie it quickly.
The worst is when you're on in a competition and someone's got 2 sales and you just got the hood, and you're like, oh freak, dude, how am I gonna catch up on that revenue? So no, dude, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think it's good to have healthy competition like that. Someone to inspire you, to push you and motivate you like that, and kind of just be aware of your team and your surrounding. As far as like beginning of the summer, I remember there was one time in particular where I don't think you were struggling per se, but I could tell like you wanted more out of the summer, and kind of like the situation where you were at, like at the very, very beginning. I remember one time I drove up in your area and we kind of talked about a couple things, but then from that moment on, I feel like you really like, yeah, I mean, you were great from the beginning, but I feel like you really, really kept just there were from that moment after like the first or second week, there was you were just off to the races. You were always people were looking for you on the top of the board. What were some beginning hurdles that you ran into that you're like, oh, I learned this, and this really helped me. This was a mental barrier I needed to break in order to achieve that level of success. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think one of the big ones was definitely towards the beginning asking for help from my leaders. Like there were days where I'd call you, and there was one day like where you came out and knocked doors with me. And I think just seeing someone knock and say similar things to what I was saying kind of helped me think like, oh man, maybe I'm just in my head. Maybe I know how to sell, but I'm just like kind of in a bad headspace right now. So I think towards the beginning of the summer, being confident, just saying, all right, I know what to say. I just maybe am in the wrong area. I remember you brought that up to me one day. I was like, dude, I can't sell anyone. I can't sell pest control. And then you're like, maybe we should move you, or maybe you should, I don't know, try a different approach to the doors. And just little things like that really helped out. So just knowing it wasn't me, it was maybe just my situation or the area I was in that was like impeding my sales. That definitely helped me out just because I knew like I could do this.
Yeah, and we do that to ourselves all the time. A lot of times we'll run into something and we'll feel like the mountain is like insurmountable, but a lot of times you don't even need to go over the mountain. You can go around it. You don't have to always go through. And there are times where you have to go through. But I think figuring out what's the best situation or what's the best course of action is a good question to ask yourself constantly in your sales cycle, in your area planning, with the people that you're managing and who you're talking to each day. So figuring that out and knowing when to push and when to pull, I think is a really, really powerful skill, and it's important. I think a lot of times in summer too, people have a bad balance. I think a lot of times people get so focused on this one thing is the answer, when a lot of times the right answer is more three-dimensional. There's different ways you can look at things. There's different avenues you can take to accomplish anything. So I think one of the big ones that I see a lot of times is people will get so being like, I just need to work hard. Like I just need to go out and work hard. And then all of a sudden they'll go out and they'll knock from like 9 to like 11 and being like, and they'll run themselves into a hole. You weren't like area planning correctly, or you weren't like doing a lot of different little things that leads to a big thing. To help a tree grow, you don't just need to pour a ton of water on it. You need to take a lot of care, like throughout a consistent amount of time, to have it grow. And I think it's the same things with your sales career. It takes a small attention over a longer period of time to really get to the next level. So, so talk to me a little bit about like your goals for next year and stuff. Are those things you've already thought about? Are you like, hey, like I would love to sell, like I would love to achieve X or Y or anything like that? Is there anything, like, have you already started planning those goals, or is that like, I'm still taking some time to decide what I want to do?
I'm still figuring out exactly what I want to do, like numbers wise, but I mean, there's definitely some numbers out there that I know I can hit, especially because like if looking at my spreadsheet of like the accounts that I sold in the times that I sold them, I definitely started augmenting every single time. Like it was, I don't know, 30 every 15 days, and then it was 40, and then it was 50, and then it was 65, and that just went up. Towards the end of the summer, I was selling like 90 every 15 days and stuff like that. Like those, so I just know that if I start the next summer at that same, how would you call it? I mean, just that same like momentum, then I can have a lot more successful summer, because I don't have to like run up to where I can get to that level.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
I know what I'm doing. So I definitely, I mean, I sold like 450 this summer, like serviced. I think next summer I could definitely do over, I think 600, just because like if I start at that level that I was selling the last few weeks, and do that the whole summer, I mean, that's definitely attainable.
Yeah, 100%. One thing I like about you, Cade, And I think a lot of times in anyone's summer, there's negative things that pop up. So there's problems with those you're working with. There's problems with area. There's problem with customers. There's problem with technicians. There's problem with a whole number of things. One of the things I liked about you though is like if you ever were kind of unsettled or like, hey, this sucked or I had the problem with this or anything like that, it was so brief with you to where you'd redirect your energy into just going out and working hard. Um, what's some things that you do mentally to keep that kind of mindset? Because I think a lot of times people's natural tendency is to stew on like, this went wrong, this was negative, that sucks. But you had a really, really good mindset where like bad thing happened, redirecting really quickly into working and focusing on things that you could control.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was looking at past success. There were definitely days where like I was at 1 and it was maybe like, I don't know, 5, 6 p.m. I was like, man, I can't sell anybody. Then I'd remind myself, wait, I can sell people. Like 2 days ago I sold, I don't know, 7 or 8 or something like that. And just telling myself that it was possible and that maybe there was just something small or maybe I was just in the wrong area. In those moments in time, rather than just kind of sitting there and be like, this area sucks, or maybe I should just sit here the rest of the night, I'd call my leader, I'd call you, I'd call Zach, and just be like, hey, like, this isn't working out, like, what can I do to change? And rather than just sitting there, like, crying over spilled milk, if something wasn't going right, I would just try to figure out, like, what do I need to change in maybe my sales tactic or where I am, just to kind of get over this hump quick and just keep on going.
That's cool. From everyone you met this summer, who was like, who was kind of a wild card? Who was like, oh, that guy was kind of funny?
Dude, I love Jacob. Jacob, guy makes me laugh. In fact, I just talked to him yesterday, and he's like, hey, you know that scooter I had during the summer? I just hacked it. Now it goes 30 miles per hour. I'm driving to campus like that fast. I love that guy. In fact, when we first moved in, we just had a queen bed. I was like, dude, I'm not sleeping in the same bed as you. So I slept on the floor or on the couch for a few days. And, you know, it was funny because when I finally got my bed, this little twin bed from Amazon, he had his queen bed. And I had my little bed that was like, I don't know, right next to his. But I love Jacob. I thought that guy made me laugh every day.
Dude, Jacob's a funny guy. And for those of you who don't know Jacob, if you ever have a technical issue with anything, he's a great resource or person to call. One thing that I really liked about him, or I admired, is he was really, really good about knowing how important it is to do something hard. I think a lot of times he would always, like when things were going suck, he's like, or if things weren't going well for him sales-wise or anything like that, he'd be like, hey, like I need to do hard things. This is good for me. And so one of the things I love that I learned from him this year is like, even when things are tough, to just be like, I do hard things. I'm going to go through this. We're going to make it happen. Was a really cool thing. Just to want to do things hard. Because I think a lot of times we live in a society where everyone wants trophies and accolades and stuff like that. And I like a person that's focused on cleansing the inner vessel or what's inside them, being like, hey, I'm going to change it. And Jacob was a good teacher of that this year. Cool. So is there anything that you read or anything that, like, you're listening to throughout the summer that you're like, oh, dude, that was great to kind of keep my mind right or keep me learning? Anything you were eating to?
I think one thing that helped me regarding that was just having a routine in the morning. Like I tried my best to go to the gym every day. I read the scriptures every day, even though it was like a little bit. I mean, I just tried to get that like spiritual nutrition in me. I also read Door to Door Millionaire.
Cool.
I didn't finish it in the summer just because I was busy and stuff like that. But I implemented stuff like that into my pitch every day, just like something I learned. And that definitely helped me grow. I mean, like I said earlier, just asking questions, changing my pitch every day, reading little things in that book definitely just helped me like continue to grow rather than like, oh, I can sell 4 a day. Like I'm going to stay at that level. It just helped me continue to improve every day.
That's cool.
30 minutes awesome.
Cool. Craziest story from the summer? Like what was there a moment where you're like, dude, this is kind of bonkers?
Okay, I can share 2. I got a gun pulled on me a few times.
Oh, shoot.
Because I maybe walked like up to the wrong side gate to peek over, see a guy mowing his lawn. Or maybe I went up a long driveway that maybe I passed a no trespassing sign or two that I missed. I don't know. There was one time where I pulled up on Google Maps, I was like, there's a house back there. I know it. So I rode my scooter like a quarter of a mile like to this guy's house, and I get there, and it was kind of weird, and I knock on the door, and it was so weird. It looked like a horror movie. The door, like, he didn't even touch it, just like swung open towards me, and he was just standing there with a shotgun. He's like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, I'm just the bug guy. Like, I don't know what I said, but he was like, "You've got about 20 seconds to get out of my property." And I was like, "All right." And I just I rode away on my scooter. Dude, that was fun.
That was fun. Well, one of the first things that I love though that you said is like you were acting like you were kind of innocent, but you're like, yeah, I might have like passed some no trespassing signs, or I was peeking over the fence or stuff like that. I think a lot of times reps that aren't selling at a high level, they aren't willing to chase someone down in their backyard. They aren't willing to stop somebody in their car as they're leaving the driveway. They kind of just like let it go. And having those small moments of when it's a little uncomfortable to just ask or just to poke or just to see if you can get through, I think those are the moments when God rewards you, and all of a sudden you have like a breakthrough sale, or the person's like, oh yeah, actually I do need pest control and stuff like that. When if you're only trying to do everything on your terms, a lot of times you're just not going to get in front of enough people. So you have to be willing to bridge the gap of it being a little uncomfortable to talk to somebody in like a different situation in order to get a sale sometimes or have a good opportunity in anything. So I think one of the cool things is like you'll find a lot of success and you didn't get shot. So
I do remember actually one story just occurred to me. I talked to this guy Terrell, this big guy. He rejected my offer the first time. He was like, I'm with the company right now, I'll think about it. And I was like, tried to fight for it, but he didn't want it. And then like a month and a half later, I'm in a totally different area. I'm talking like 100 miles away, like 200, like in the opposite direction of Dallas. And I go down this driveway, and he goes, oh, dang, they found me. And it was Terrell. And he was like talking with this lady and this guy. Long story short, it was like his father-in-law's house or something like that. And I ended up, it was a long, hard sale, but I sold him and his father-in-law like standing there in a driveway. And I'd sold him. It was so funny. And that just really tells you that like sometimes God wants you to sell Terrell. He's going to put him there.
I love it. Movement. You're really good at keep swimming and moving and keeping constant energy. But I know there's probably moments when you're like, hey, I want to stop, or I don't want to continue forward, or stuff like that. What are some things you do when those moments arise when you're like, it'd be easier to turn in today, or I don't know if I really want to push past this point, or what are some things you remind yourself of when those moments do arise?
I think definitely, especially in competition, like it's 8:20, I'm tired, nobody's going to want to open the door to me. And then thinking one day, like, Landon's going to knock until 10. I need to knock until 10. And I think just that motivation of just knowing that other guys are doing it, I can do it.
Yeah. Shout out Landon, by the way. He's always good at like the late night owl deals. And he's always good for some trash talk too in the group chat. But well, cool. Well, Cade, I mean, before we leave, is there anything that you're like, hey, and the reason I keep asking questions like this, you just had a great first summer. Is there anything you would want to say to another rookie coming through as they're going out next year? Is there anything you're like, hey, I'd pass this advice along, or this would be big if you want to have a great first year?
Yeah, definitely. I think being open to critiques, I think that definitely helps. As in, a lot of times people are kind of prideful, and maybe like they've been selling for a month and they really don't know everything. And then someone critiques their pitch and they're like, no, dude, like I know what I'm doing. That's not a good mindset, especially if that advice is coming from someone who's been doing it for a long time. I also think that like a lot of guys give up after like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It's just kind of hard. Maybe they're not selling. It does get better. Like obviously, if you start something new, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to be the best at it. So I think there's definitely
Trajectory?
There's a trajectory. There's pretty much where if you just kind of give up before you get to that like high point, you're never going to know what you could have achieved during the summer. So I think definitely just keep on going.
Yeah. And I think stopping 3 feet from goal is something that a lot of people do. And there was a quote I heard the other day by Mark Twain. I think, and people don't know if he actually said it, but a lot of people will credit to him. They say, most people die at 27, but we bury them at 70. And I see that a lot of times in the summer. Some people, like, their summer can end week 3 or 4 because mentally they decide, hey, I'm just going to kind of be here. But the best people figure out how to get life throughout the entirety of the summer. The guys and the people that when you feel that life is beginning to like leave your summer, finding ways of like getting around the right people, asking questions, putting in some mental effort at week 3, 4, and 5 is something a lot of people don't do, but it's absolutely necessary if you want to be, if you want to have just a good experience, a good life, a good situation. So I think a lot of times people think that summers are won in that first week or two because that's emotion. You want it to be good. You want it to be like a good experience. But I actually think for a lot of rookies, week 3, 4, 5, and 6, that's when you're determining how good the rest of the summer and possibly your future in door-to-door can be. And so I think I love that point of just highlighting it's when you need that second wind is when it's really important to lock down. So
definitely.
Cade, dude, thank you so much for being on. Any other quote or anything you want to leave us with before we leave, or anything you've heard you're like, oh, I heard this recently at school or around, or anything like that?
Any quotes? Let me think. Off the top of my head, no, but I'm gonna give you a quote right now. I'm gonna make one up.
I love it.
Just keep knocking.
You heard it here. Just keep knocking. Thank you, Bird Nation. Good having you on, Cade. Dude, love you, brother.